This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to Weights and Wealth. This week's shout out goes out to our friends Chris and Saeed from the Higher Standard podcast. They get the shout out because they engage with us on Instagram and they engage with our videos and comment on them. So thank you, Chris and Saeed, for supporting us. And if you want to earn a shout out on the show, either comment on Instagram or share us, or what else can they do, Nick?
They can write a review on Apple or they can, well, not on Spotify, but
yeah. Or just send us a DM or a text that you shared it with other people, and we'll enter you for the monthly raffle, which we'll have at the end of the episode today. Or we'll give you a shout out if you don't win the raffle. All right. For the weights wisdom of the week, today we've got work on your weaknesses in the gym until they become strengths. So Nick, did you have, like in college, a big weakness in the gym that you just focused on until it wasn't a weakness anymore?
Yeah, that was my squat, because I was sick of having a poverty squat. There was one point where my bench and my squat in high school were right around the same, and I just wanted to change that. So I just started hammering squat, and it's to the point where it is starting to become a strength. It's definitely one of my better lifts now.
I dealt with several lower body injuries, like broken toes and stuff, that was constantly from like senior year of high school until sophomore year of college. I think I had a broken big toe or foot like 4 different times. And I was just constantly increasing my bench, but not constantly increasing my squat. And this is after like you and Pat Rabbit and I were benching, and we got a 225 squat. We got our first, Pat Rabb and I got our first 225 bench, and I wasn't squatting like that. So my bench was higher than my squat. Yes. Not anymore though. But yeah, definitely don't want a bench bigger than your squat. So as far as working on your weaknesses in the gym, prioritize the weaknesses first. So when you go to the gym, we've talked before about how if you're trying to do cardio and lifting, if you prioritize the cardio first, your gains aren't going to be as good. So we recommend doing cardio at a different time or on a different day than you're lifting. But if you are doing them in the same workout, put your cardio after if you're trying to make gains in the weight room, right? So same thing with just exercise order and selection. You're going to get the most gains from the first exercise or 2 exercises that you do. This is why, one of the reasons why people will place the compound lifts at the beginning of their workout, also because they're the most taxing, but you're going to get the most gains. So if you've got a really lagging muscle group, say your shoulders are just way behind and you're trying to bring up your shoulders, put those first in your workout. But definitely if you have a weakness, it might be because you don't like doing that body part or that lift, but focus on that so that's no longer a weakness. That's harder to do than focusing on like your bench if you already love benching. It's easy to do that. It's hard to do like RDLs if you hate RDLs and bring those up with the rest of your lifts.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why my squat was horrible for a while, just because I hated squatting. And then there was one week I just started squatting every day. I did that for an entire week. And I mean, I got a little bit stronger from it, but it was more just that it forced my body to get used to squatting. So it wasn't as painful as when I wasn't squatting much. And then now it's one of my favorite lifts. Yeah. It's probably like my favorite one that I look forward to the most.
I get a lot of shirtless videos of Nick squatting. All right. For our intro article, Nick found this article. It's from Wall Street Journal. We'll post it in the show notes. Although I think Wall Street Journal is one of our sources where we subscribe. So You might not have access to it, but we'll post a picture of it if you're watching the video as well.
Yeah, Marco Rubio proposed a bill to no longer allow people who have SNAP to buy soda and other junk food, because there's tens of billions of dollars of SNAP going to soda every year, and I think 200 something billion going towards junk food, and that is not good for people's health, and it also places a larger strain on the medical system. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this bill will go through and kind of encourage people to buy healthier food.
Yeah, it's a really tough issue because on the one hand, you can say we don't want people wasting the money they're getting from food stamps, which is SNAP, right? Mm. We don't want people wasting that money on junk food. And you can also say that it's like empty calories, right? It's just sugar that they're eating, but at least they're getting calories. They're not starving. Although also a lot of people that are on welfare in America aren't starving, right? A lot of them are overweight. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to kind of say who's right when you get into that conversation. And then furthermore, there's food deserts across America. So a food desert is where in like a 1 mile or a 2 mile range, you don't have access to healthy food. So you don't have like a Kroger that's got fresh fruits and vegetables and meat. You only have convenience stores with soda and chips and candy and that kind of stuff. So if someone doesn't have a car, like, yeah, they could take public transit to like a grocery store 4 miles away. But if they live in a food desert, the only options they might have for spending their food stamps is soda and chips and stuff like that. So a lot of policies like this, people, like especially the congressmen and the senators, they'll throw out these policies because they sound good. But are you actually looking at the different effects of how these policies will affect people when they're put into place?
Yeah, I mean, this could even kind of help get rid of or contribute to like less food deserts, because right now, if there's a large poor area that is on food stamps and they're largely buying junk food, that's why there are so many convenience stores. So maybe if you're just allowed to buy, Whole Foods, I mean, I don't think it would go that far, but it could bring some better food to that area.
That's true. So if the businesses that are selling just the highly processed food aren't able to move that as much because food stamps don't work for that, then maybe they might start stocking other things.
Mm-hmm. So things that people can buy with their SNAP.
That's true. It's hard to like game theory all the effects.
It is.
This is why creating policy is so difficult, because it's so hard to consider everything that's going to happen as a result of a policy. That's like a lot of policies that are created to help poor people actually do the opposite. We've gone over some of these before, but we can do a whole episode if people want on policies that have been created to help poor people that actually wind up hurting poor people. So if you want us to do that, let us know. But moving on, we've got a graphic here that we got from Small Step Finance on Instagram. So basically, we'll post his little Instagram tweet thing, but it's got 6 different things about the average American financially. So in this episode, we're going to go through these 6 financial things about the average American, these statistics. And then I also went out and found 6 correlatory statistics for fitness or health. So we'll basically give you an overview of how the average American is doing for their weights and their wealth, and maybe how you can improve for these different statistics. So everything from home ownership to student loans to the amount of leisure time people are spending. And then on the fitness side, we've got being on medicine, how many pounds people gain in college, and other things. So we'll get into that right now. Nick, do you want to start us off with what that graphic has on the wealth side?
Yeah. So the first one is that the average American has less than 1,000 in savings. And this is obviously not very good because emergencies happen, medical emergencies, something happens to your car, and you need money to pay for it right away. And there's also one on credit card debt, and this likely contributes to the credit card debt, because if somebody doesn't have an emergency fund, then they have to put that on a credit card. And especially for a single person like myself, it shouldn't be that hard to save. There are likely things that you're buying that you don't need and that you could cut back on. It is a little bit harder if you have a family and you are making like a lower income. That definitely is harder because you have a lot of expenses. So that's definitely a struggle, I would say.
Yeah. The closer you are to being paycheck to paycheck, exponentially harder it is to save and build up that rainy day fund. As far as like a emergency savings account, how much do you try to keep in an emergency savings account, either as like a percentage or just a general number?
Well, so right now I have all my money in a savings account because the interest rates are very high right now, and I'm also looking to buy a house soon. So that's why I got out of the market. And the stock market has done very well this year, so I missed out on some gains, but I'm not really too worried about that. I'm more worried about preserving like my cash. I would say before that, I try to keep like a $3,000 buffer or so between like my monthly expenses and yeah, just so I have money just in case.
A lot of people will say you want 2 to 3 months of what your spending is in your emergency savings. I try to keep about 5,000. It'll fluctuate up and down. But it's having 2 to 3 months of spending is like really hard to keep in your savings, because then like the opposite of what you said, like you're trying to hold on to that because the savings rate is good right now and you're trying to buy a house soon. But like for a lot of people, they'd rather invest that money because they think it's just sitting there in their savings account. And growing up with in the low ZIRP environment, the zero interest rate environment that we kind of grew up in, the interest rates were really low. So it didn't make sense to save. Like we were always taught, don't save money because it's going to lose value compared to inflation, right? So, but now with interest rates switching, some of that conventional wisdom kind of flips a little bit, and it does make sense to just hold money in your savings.
Yeah, I mean, well, with inflation as high as it is, I think I'm still losing real dollars. But I'm not too worried about that. More just worried about like preserving the cash right now.
What's the next stat?
The next stat is the average person doesn't own a home until age 34. I think this is largely because home prices have gone way up. I think we've all seen those comparisons to how expensive it is to buy a home now compared to in like the 1970s, 80s. That was also when the interest rates were super high, but regardless of that, the cost of home ownership has definitely gone up. I mean, it's ideal to buy a home when you're younger and when you can, but that's only if you know that you're going to settle in an area. Like it doesn't really make sense to buy a home, just own it for a few years if you're just going to move somewhere else.
Yeah, when you say ideal, it's very situationally dependent, right? And it depends where you live. Are you in a more suburban area or rural area or an urban area? Like if you're in your 20s, it's going to be really hard to afford a home downtown New York or Chicago, right? So it really depends a lot on where you're living and then what your investment strategy is. We've talked before about Robert Kiyosaki in Cash Flow Quadrant, how he goes through the different ways that you can invest and how you should have a plan for what kind of investor you want to be, whether you want to invest through the market or through real estate or through businesses. There's different ways that you can invest. It's real estate and the stock market are not the only two ways that you can invest. So it's good to figure out what kind of investor you want to be, and then your home ownership strategy should probably fall in line, at least partially, with that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think marital status has like a big impact on home ownership, because if you aren't married and you're planning to get married, you know, your spouse might not want to live in that house, and then you might have to end up selling it soon after you bought it, and those closing costs kind of go out the door, because closing costs are a huge factor in buying a home.
Yeah. Closing. If you're going to be like a first time buyer, the closing costs might surprise you.
Yeah. I mean,
I definitely was not like prepared for that.
What is it? It's 3% of.
Yeah, it's around there. It varies, and you can get the seller to cover some of your closing costs depending on like the market and the negotiation between the real estate agents and how many other offers are in. So like when I was buying, Clarksville's weird because since it's an Army city, there's always people moving in and out with PCSing for the Army. So like it's hard to find an environment in an Army city where there's not multiple offers on like a decent home. But
it does end up being multiple thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah.
That being said, I am single and I am looking to buy a home soon, but that's more because I want to get into rental properties.
Yeah.
So I've been just looking around on Zillow for a 3-bed, 2-bath.
Yeah.
And then hopefully I can rent out the other rooms, and then after a couple of years move out, buy a new home, and then just be able to rent that one.
Yeah.
Because the tax benefits for owning rentals are insane.
The tax code is written for the investor, and especially for the real estate investor.
It is. So. The number one lobbying group is a real estate investment PAC.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What you got next for us?
We have the average American has almost $38,000 in student loans. So this is not great, but it's also unavoidable for a lot of people if they want, because people who do go to college on average make a lot more. But that's obviously swayed by people who choose majors like engineering or accounting or I don't know what, or like law or something like that. So if you want to go into one of those fields, it's kind of unavoidable unless you are able to work your way through college, go to a community college, or go into the trades is another great option.
Yeah, 2 and 2 is like I think a very underrated way to do college. 2 years at a community college and then 2 years at a public or private like university, right? So that will help you save a lot of money, especially like all the classes we took at Dayton in our first 2 years. I mean, some of them were like our freshman English class was downright ridiculous brainwash propaganda. But then other classes were just not very high quality classes. They seemed like high school courses some of the time. And then some of like the higher level math classes I was taking at the time, like Calc 3, differential equations, those were, I felt like good quality classes, but that was, I mean, talking probably like 4 or 5 of my classes the first 2 years were probably like maybe better at Dayton than I could have gotten at a community college. I felt like for the most part, most of the classes I was taking those first 2 years were kind of junk.
Yeah.
Filler.
I mean, from the financial perspective, 2 and 2 definitely makes sense. And it should be a bigger thing, but people also want to spend 4 years in college. You know, it's kind of like the 4-year paid vacation that people talk about, which you do meet a lot of good friends. Like I wouldn't have met you or Pat had I not gone to Dayton for the full 4 years. So there's also that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. And next we've got credit card debt, which you touched on in the beginning.
Yeah. So the average American has $5,200 in credit card debt. I mean, on the surface level, I would say it's really not that bad. We've talked about before that you just shouldn't have more than a month's worth of expenses in credit card debt, because you could not be paying interest on the whole $5,200 if you just pay it off each month.
Well, you think the statistic is after 60 days delinquent?
I
would think that's what it would mean by debt.
I don't know. I mean, as soon as you spend, it is considered credit card debt. I don't know how they would differentiate from it.
Okay.
And the way I kind of look at credit card debt, it's just like in advance on your future income, right? And you are able to do stuff with that money, and you could have it making money for you.
Most people don't, though. Most people just buy stuff.
Just buy stuff.
Also, you got to be really careful with credit card debt because it can get out of hand really quickly because the interest rates are so high on it. So we've talked before about smart ways to use a credit card and how you shouldn't be spending more money than you have in your checking account on your credit card.
Yeah. All right. The next one is that over 50% of people want to switch their job. And this is kind of where if your situation was worse, then you would actually be better off because it would force you to make a change. And this could be like a number of things. It could be people looking for their job as their purpose in their life, whereas a lot of the times it's just a means to make money. Could be the amount of time that they're spending, the stress, but it's obviously not something that's good. And it's hard to really tell people just to change their whole career based on if they're liking their job or not. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, so there's different things that there's different ways to look at this, right? You can say, if you hate your job, you should find a new one, right? So that you're enjoying your life more. You can also say, hey, you're an adult, you have to work. It doesn't matter if you like your job. You can enjoy your time outside of your job, right? So there's a couple different ways to look at it. But what you were saying, I think, is interesting with how if it was worse, people would switch, right? So that's called it's called the beta something paradox. But it's basically like if the store is the Publix that's right there, it's only a quarter mile away, right? So we could walk, and walking is fine. If it was 11 miles away, we'd be like, oh, that's too bad. We're going to drive. It's too far. Like, it's too much of an effort. We'll just drive. Whereas if it's only a quarter mile, we might just walk, right? So I can't remember the name. It's the beta something paradox, but basically if something's bad, we'll just stick with it and we'll be okay with it until it gets to a certain level of bad, and then we'll make a change. So humans are funny. But so with like a lot of people, if their job was super bad, then they would leave and find a new one. But also I feel like a lot of people don't do enough like continuing education for themselves and continuing to grow as like a person, especially in their field, where they don't feel like they're competitive enough to go find a new job at a better environment or with higher pay or whatever the reason they don't like their job is, right? So I feel like making yourself more competitive in your field and improving yourself in whatever job you are doing or you want to do is a way that you can get ahead of this so that you are able to get a better job. Because I mean, at the end of the day, if an employer is setting up a better culture and work environment, people are going to like that job more, and there's going to be more applicants. It's like 10 years ago at Google, how Google and Facebook and some of these tech places had these environments that people wanted to be in because it was like these campuses with free lunch and these awesome perks of working there. More people want to apply. That job becomes more competitive and harder to get because the employer has set up a better work environment. So
yeah, I think more often than not, it's the work environment that people don't like, not so much the job. I mean, I remember I was on a call at my last job, and one of the high up people were like, I'm not going to lie, like, this job isn't very fun. It kind of sucks sometimes, but well, they were trying to get us back to the office and just kind of get us talking more because job satisfaction went down during COVID, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So it's just more so about creating relationships with the people at work rather than what you're actually doing. Because a lot of the times work is just that. It's just work. It's just being an adult and getting your job done. But there are also ways that you can try to make it fun. Like during tax season, I'll create little games for myself. Like I'll try to prepare a tax return for time and just do it as quick as possible.
So many errors in Nick's tax returns.
I'll go back afterwards and like look at it and review my work. But just creating little games like that at work kind of helps it make it go by better.
You bring up a really good point, though. A lot of it is about your perspective. If you just decide to tell yourself that you hate your job, you're going to hate your job. if you try to look at it differently and you try to look at the positives of your job, whether it's the amount of time that you get to spend talking to people, if you're in like some sort of personnel related job or anything else, if you just look at it and tell yourself that you like it, like you can change, your perspective can change how you feel about a lot of things. I feel like a lot of people struggle with taking their emotions and then thinking about it and then responding differently. A lot of people just take their emotions and that's how they feel and that's how they're going to feel. And if that's you, if you struggle to look at your emotions with a perspective and then change how you feel about something, I'd recommend like reading Stoicism. Daily Stoic's a good start. But that will help you be able to take your emotions, think about them, and then respond to them and realize that your emotions don't define how your mood has to be for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Ricky, or not Ricky, Paul talked about a lot, is just trying to keep things in perspective and what really matters. And like you said earlier, you should try to find enjoyment outside of your job. And I think that helps with that.
Speaking of trying to find enjoyment outside of your job, this next statistic we have is the average American watches 33 hours a week of TV. I think that statistic, because I went and did some research, that statistic isn't necessarily correct. I think that's screen time, leisure screen time, not just TV.
Okay.
They just kind of lumped it in because it's a short little tweet and has to fit on the little Instagram square.
And yeah, this probably isn't helping with overall life satisfaction, which could also contribute to why people don't like their jobs, because they aren't finding something of real value outside their job. And I mean, there are so many other things you can do after work instead of watch TV.
Yeah.
Like read, or I'm trying to find like some sort of sports league to join. Just something that kind of keeps you engaged outside of work and not just sitting on the couch.
Yeah. I think the worst thing that you can do if you're struggling to enjoy your life because you don't like your job is to go home and just self-medicate with dopamine from watching TV, because then you're going to feel unproductive outside of work. And you already don't like the small amount of production that you have at work. And we know that humans need to be working on something to feel fulfilled. That's part of man's search for meaning. One of the 3 areas of finding purpose is in your occupation or what you do, producing something of value to the community, right? So instead of watching TV, maybe you can pick up a hobby or do continuing education. You can read, you can spend time with loved ones or friends or what have you. But I think the amount of TV that people watch is definitely not ideal and probably makes people feel worse about themselves in a lot of cases. Anything else you got to add on the TV?
I do not. What is our first statistic on the weight side?
All right, I'll go through all of them real quick, and then we'll go through one at a time. So on the weight side, the average American can't do 10 push-ups, is on medications by, we'll go into that one more. Gains a significant amount of weight in college, wishes they could move pain-free, and watches 2 hours and 33 minutes of TV a day. So this goes into that last statistic. So I'll actually start with that one. But as I said, I went and did some research after seeing that statistic, and it looked like it was total leisure time on screens for that 33 hours per week, whereas just strictly TV is closer to 2.5 hours a day for the average American. And then they also said that the average adult over the age of, I think it was either like 21 or 24, watches 18 hours a week. So from 18 to early 20s, I think it goes down a little bit. But we'll post that link in the show notes from Statista. And for all of the stats that we're presenting here today, you can find links in the show notes. But moving on to the first one I mentioned, the average American can't do 10 push-ups. So a nationwide survey of Americans found that about 54% of adults can't perform more than 10 consecutive push-ups. So that's obviously not very good. That means people aren't very strong, and that means they can't take care of themselves. We've talked before about how many people die from falling, right? And if you can't get up, that's not good. So muscle is extremely protective, and being able to move around on your own is extremely important, especially as you get older. And I think that starts when you're young. It starts by having some sort of routine that you stick to with having mobility and strength. And it's much easier to start that earlier on in your life than once you're already 60 and having a hard time moving.
Yeah. And this is something that you can do outside of work that will make yourself feel productive. Like you will feel good once you start improving in the gym. Like it's one of my hobbies. That's one way that I feel productive and find meaning outside of work.
Mm-hmm. And this stat ranges, it's not just old people that can't do 10 push-ups. The article I read said that those reporting less than 5 push-ups consecutively were evenly split from 25 to 64 years old. And I think a lot of that has to do with the obesity and overweight problem that we have in America. Because if you're 25 and you can't do 5 push-ups, it's probably due to your body weight, not lack of strength. Because 5 push-ups, you don't need that much strength for. Right. So I remember when my dad started trying to lose weight when I was younger. One of the things he started doing, he was doing the elliptical, which wasn't helping him very much at all. He spent a lot of time doing the elliptical in the mornings before work, and it never really worked out for him. But then he started doing push-ups, and he started doing them against the counter in his bathroom at like a diagonal angle, which makes them easier, right? Like a wall push-up is the easiest, and then going at 45-degree angle against like a desk or a counter, and then on the ground is the hardest, right? So he started really simple with just doing push-ups on the bathroom counter in the morning. And I remember that because I was little. And then from there, he eventually started doing harder push-ups. And then when I got into lifting, he got into lifting too. And the point is just starting small, starting by beating this average American statistic is going to put you many steps in the right direction. So if you can't do 10 push-ups, start doing push-ups and hope that you can start moving around better.
Yeah. And I mean that like being able to do 10 push-ups won't take you very much time either. So you can take pride in being stronger than the average American.
Yeah. The next one we have is 69% of American adults are on prescription medications and 24% are on 4 or more medications. So Americans are the most medicated country in the world. And I think a lot of health issues that people have go back to these medications with all the side effects. Once you're on one, okay, now you need to take this for the side effects of this first one. And then because of that, you need to take another medication for the side effects from these two. And all of a sudden, you're taking 5 different medications that all have these side effects, and you're not healthy, right? So there's a time and a place for medicine. But we've talked before about how it puts a strain on the healthcare system. And if people were just able to get healthier metabolically, if they were able to maintain a healthy body fat percentage and have a little bit better diet and a little bit more muscle on their body, probably wouldn't be in this state where over 2/3 of American adults are on prescription meds.
Yeah.
The next stat we've got is on the freshman 15. So you've heard about the freshman 15, Nick, I assume. Do you know how much weight you gained? Because sophomore year, you did like a dirty bulk and you were getting quite chunky.
So I didn't think it at the time, but going back and looking at pictures of myself, I was a chunky boy. Like I had, my cheeks were gigantic. And yeah, that's because I was dirty bulking. I would just eat anything I possibly could, didn't matter what it was. And I was going for more high calorie food. Mm-hmm. So that was more sophomore year. I didn't put it on freshman year, but I think going into college, I was probably around 160, 165. And by sophomore year, I was 185, 190.
Yeah. I put on a freshman 20.
Yeah.
But that's because I finally learned how to lift correctly, right? Mm-hmm. So I was actually having decent programming, not great programming, but decent. And then I was exposed to creatine for the first time from Nick. And then we would get chicken from the dining halls, and I ran out of my dining hall money by like October that first semester. And I wasn't even getting like drinks and stuff. It's just I was eating so many like grilled chicken sandwiches trying to get my protein in. And then for extra calories, I just had loaves of bread and peanut butter and jelly, and I would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all the time freshman year, just to keep getting those extra calories. And we would do the Sylvester Stallone raw eggs for extra protein sometimes.
Oh, what do you do? I
think that might have been more me and Pat Rabbit.
Do that. Did you? I drank one time and I wanted to throw up afterwards.
But as far as a freshman 15, Nick and I definitely gained weight in college, but it was good weight. A lot of people gain a lot of bad weight in college. The studies vary on how much weight people gain. So I looked at a bunch of studies and they were kind of all over the place. But on average, it was showing that people gained 3 pounds their freshman year. And that kind of was a sustained average throughout college, and people would gain about 12 pounds throughout college. So not as much of a freshman 15. I think that's skewed because you see some people blow up when they go to college, right? But on average, it's about 3 pounds per person. But there was a study that looked at over 1,000 people from beginning to end of college, the same people, and 70% of them gained weight, which averaged 12 pounds. So that statistic is of the people that gained weight that I was mentioning, with 3 pounds a year or 12 pounds in total. And then the percent of participants in that study classified as overweight or obese went from 18% to 31%. So there is a huge problem where people do go to school and gain a lot of weight. And some of the ways that you can avoid that are by maintaining a lifting routine throughout college. That will do wonders for you. Just lifting 3 times a week, keeping your metabolism up, gaining muscle that's going to be protective against a lot of the sugar that you might be eating in college or drinking in college. Because muscle will help suck up that sugar that you eat with glycogen stores. So one of the best things that you can do, this is why people that have diabetes see their levels with insulin and glucose get better once they start lifting, because muscle's kind of protective against those rising blood sugar levels. But my point is, one of the things you can do when you go to college is start lifting, and that will help any weight gain that you might have be positive weight gain.
Yeah, I think also drinking moderately would definitely help too, because a lot of people go to college and just it's like the first time with freedom, and people just drink a lot on the weekends. And that's also when you tend to get off your diet, like you eat pizza at the end of the night. And I think just trying to keep it as moderate as possible would be beneficial, not only for, your weight, but also just your school. You'll do better in school, and just staying like mentally healthy as well.
And if you are someone that's going to be drinking quite a bit in college, one of the tricks I used to stay lean is on the weekend days that I knew I was going to be drinking a lot, I would just prioritize protein in the morning. So I'd have mostly protein and not much else macro wise. And then I knew that the calories from the beer would be the rest of the calories. So healthy, no, but it will help you stay lean and hit your protein if you just do like protein shakes and chicken and eggs in the morning. Because a lot of people, they'll drink, but they'll eat normally that day and they'll be low on protein, and then they'll get pizza or like junk food after they start drinking. That's the other thing, is not eating after you start drinking that night. Trying to avoid going out and getting junk food with everyone. That was another one of my tricks in college that I think helped me stay lean. I wouldn't partake in a lot of the eating that people would do after they started drinking. All right, what do we have next? Moving pain-free. All right, so 13.1% of working age Americans, which is classified as 20 to 69 years old, have chronic low back pain, which is every single day for at least 3 months. And then 60% of adults over the age of 18 have had some type of body pain over the last 3 months. So generally, people want to be able to just live their life and move pain-free. And I think that lifting is a good way to be able to live that way, right? So you might get injured if you lift for a long time. Eventually, you're going to get some sort of injury. But if you're someone that lifts a lot, I think you are able to recover a lot faster, first of all. And second of all, you've already built up the strength where you can rehab a lot quicker. If you don't have a lot of muscle, that rehab process is going to be a lot longer for any type of injury that you do get. And we know that you're going to get hurt in life just from whatever life throws at you. So it's better to be prepared and already have a significant amount of muscle mass so that it's a lot easier to rehab whatever injury you do get.
Yeah, and part of this could also just be from the nature of people's jobs. Like people sit all day, not great for your low back if you don't have good posture. So try to get like a standing desk. I have a standing desk at work. I don't utilize it enough, or just like standing up throughout the day.
That's a great direction to take on this. I also do a standing desk at work, and I think it's going to be, you've heard the stats that like sitting is as bad as smoking and stuff like that. So, but definitely for low back pain too. If that is something you struggle with, try to get a standing desk and then make sure that you have good posture and try to work on tilting your pelvis. A lot of people that struggle with low back pain, they have a lot of anterior pelvic tilt. So that's where you're making your butt look bigger.
You just point at me.
You're making your butt look bigger because your pelvis is tilting forward, your butt's sticking out, and then you have an accentuated curve in your low back. So if you're watching the video, I'll stand real quick and show how you can tilt your pelvis. So anterior pelvic tilt would be like this, where your butt is sticking out and you have a huge curve in your low back. So if you're standing at a desk and that posture is something you struggle with, then just turn your hips forward like this a little bit, and that's posterior pelvic tilt. And that's not like a cure for low back pain, but for some people, a lot of their low back pain is due to that anterior pelvic tilt that they're stuck in, and that's usually what happens when you sit as well. It's one of the reasons why sitting is not good for people's low back pain. So if you can focus on standing and getting that posterior pelvic tilt, that might help some people's low back pain. Not everyone, but
doesn't some also come from mobility issues, like not having fully mobile hips and ankles? And
hip mobility is a big issue for low back pain as well. And then hip and ankle mobility or other ankle issues can affect the knee a lot. So a lot of people's knee pain starts in the feet, or it's a result of the hips. So lifting and doing your mobility work and having full range of motion strength, being able to squat deep is going to be very protective for you for being able to move well and have a full range of motion. So that's where doing mobility and then taking exercises through a full range of motion is going to be helpful long term. So for some clients, I might just have them box squatting because we can't get them into a full squat yet, right? But being able to do a full squat all the way down with weight is going to be beneficial to them in the long run for their mobility. So that's where programming, just doing something for hypertrophy might not always be the best. Sometimes you want to do full range of motion exercises that are going to be helpful long-term for your mobility. That is all we've got for the statistics. But Nick, do we want to go through and compare ourselves to the average American? Or I guess we'll go through each of the statistics real quick so that the listeners can see where they're at compared to the average American. So
okay, so for the wealth ones, we got the average American has less than $1,000 in savings, doesn't own a home until age 34, has almost $38,000 in student loans, has $5,200 of credit card debt, wants to switch their job, and has 33 hours of screen time per week.
All right, and then the average American can't do 10 push-ups, is on at least one prescription medication, gains 12 pounds in college. And then we didn't cover the obesity, so that's my fault, but we're approaching where about half of adults are now obese. And then the last one, or the last two, is have chronic pain and watches 2 hours and 33 minutes of TV a night. So I guess if you want, you can compare yourself to the average American in those stats and see how you're doing. And if you're not doing well, come up with a plan to start increasing either your weights or your wealth in whatever area you need to.
Or send us a DM if you want to know where to get started. Because a lot of people just have trouble just figuring out where to start.
Yeah, if you're paralysis by analysis, shoot us a DM and we'll help you get started.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Oh, wait. Nope.
No.
We've got the book club.
Oh, yes.
And our monthly raffle winner.
Oh, yeah. So Pat from Chicago won the raffle again this month. He won in June, but he's also winning this month because he started to participate in our book club and shared us on his story. So,
yeah,
do you remember which book he read?
I think we gave him 5 raffle entries for his on Instagram. He took a picture of the book club book he was reading and tagged us and put hashtag Weights and Wealth Book Club. So because of that, we gave him 5. For different things that people do, we'll give them different amounts of entries. So usually a comment on Instagram, we give 1. Sharing with other people, we give 2 raffle entries. I think when your sister hung up flyers everywhere, we gave her 10.
Yeah.
So we weight it differently depending on what you do. But so Pat Rabbit won again, so he'll be getting another coffee gift card. And then for book club, Nick, do you want to start with your book?
Yeah, so we have Building a Storybrand by Donald Miller. And this is largely a marketing book. It's kind of how to build a narrative around your product and then sell it to your customers. And there's also a lot of other interesting things on it, like how to build a website, how the eye moves through a website. So it's definitely a cool book if you are looking to start your own brand.
Yeah, if you're in marketing, it's a good book. If you're an entrepreneur, it's a great book. For any entrepreneur out there, I think Building a Storybrand, just like the E-Myth, has got to be on your shelf. So that's the wealth book of the month. And then the weights book of the month is Arnold Schwarzenegger, Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. So if you haven't read Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, it goes through a lot of how he likes to train, his thoughts on training different muscle groups. There's hundreds of exercises in here where he goes through how to do each exercise and the benefits of different exercises. I've pulled some exercises from it in the past, especially for my delts. He does an exercise I'd never seen before for lateral raises where you lay down on an incline bench and you use the dumbbell against gravity, because it makes it a lot harder, because a lot of people, for their lateral raises that they do, all the difficulty is just in the beginning of that movement, from like 15 degrees to 45 degrees. But then it's just really easy at the top. Whereas if you're at an incline and doing lateral raise, it's a lot harder because the dumbbell's moving more vertically.
I would think that's harder to get some body English as well.
Yeah,
if you're laying on a bench.
So that's a really good medial delt isolation exercise. So I pulled that and upright rows from this book, and they helped my shoulders get a lot bigger. So if you're someone that's just getting into lifting, check out Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. But that's the book of the month for the weight side. So, all right, guys, thanks.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.